What's going on, guys? Joey here, and today we're going to answer the question, do you need to be upright when you squat? I get it. I know where it comes from. Upright squats look pretty, right? They look very different from taco squats. So what we used to call them back in the day, when you have to fold, almost getting your chest all the way down to your knees, just to hit depth properly. And, we just kind of look at things online and think that's the way it needs to go. But I am here to tell you that although some of the prettiest squats you might see are upright, like an Olympic weightlifter, right? It's a very aesthetic way to squat. You do not need to do that. And it can actually be dangerous for you to try to emulate that, because your body might be saying, hey, the key to your gains, the key to a big squat for you is going to be to embrace your hip dominant squat, tilt forward, because that's just the way that you're built. That's what needs to happen in order for you to keep the bar over your midfoot, over your center of gravity, hit depth, and then come up safely. Everybody's different, and if you're trying to copy your favorite lifter and you're just like, man, why can't I get it like them? Well, their femurs might be literally shaped different than yours. And that's pretty much the short answer. Now, I think what's more important is that when you're moving through the squat, you're keeping your back straight, or as straight as possible. And your center of gravity, I like the cue midfoot. You want to keep the pressure over the middle of your foot. And if you can do that, like if you have trouble with your squat stance, right? And you just don't know how you should be squatting, walk out like 50% of your max and stand, just fucking stand, right? Stand there with the weight before you do a squat and think, where do I feel the pressure? Now, when you go down into the squat, if you feel that pressure moving around, going to your toes, getting on your heels, whatever, you want to try to keep it over your midfoot. If you can't do that, it might be like midfoot, maybe mid, slightly in front of the middle of your foot, right? It doesn't have to be exact. It's close enough, right? If you draw a circle around the middle of your foot, it's going to be somewhere in there, but it's not going to be on your toes or your heels. Now, some people, depending on how they're built, may need to cue their squat differently, but I have found some of the most efficient squats that I've ever seen, a lot of world record squats. You're going to need to have the best center of gravity, the most force output, and that's going to be having a good base, and midfoot just kind of helps you do that. If you're standing there, and I would literally know I'm going to destroy this squat, because when I'm standing here holding this weight out, I feel so solid, I feel so planted that I just know I'm using my entire body to control this weight. I'm not leaning towards any which way, and I just feel very connected to the floor. And as I move through space, as I descend, as I break at my hips and my knees at the same time, I'm really trying to keep, that pressure going the same way that I had it when I was standing. I'm going a little bit slow as I descend, and then once my femurs kind of hit that angle, that 45-degree angle, I'm going to accelerate, because the weight's going to get a lot heavier once you pass that point. But I've already controlled the weight, halfway down, keeping things over midfoot. And the chances of me hitting a perfectly timed squat at the perfect angle, allowing my knees to go forward and my hips to go back as much as I need to for me to hit depth while maintaining that midfoot. I've done all those things. I hit all my checkpoints, boom, hit the bottom of the squat. And now I'm firing up as hard as I possibly can, keeping everything locked in, trying to keep my back straight, keeping my balance, and then I'm completing the lift. And if you do it right, it gets pretty damn easy. You don't even feel like you have to do that much, honestly, until you get to that almost 50% point on the way up. Then you're gonna really have to fight, because that's gonna be your sticky point. You don't have any really, you don't really have too much momentum going through that. But yeah, that's kind of like a quick squat run through, and then while you're doing that, everything that I just said, you might need to tip forward when you do that, because your hips are going to have to go back more than somebody else. Somebody with short femurs and a long torso, maybe they could just stay really straight, also depending on how their torso is set up. And yeah, and that's why it's important to like experiment and try things out for yourself versus like, oh, this guy's better than me at this lift, I'm gonna copy him. You know what I mean? That might be a good place to start and it might work out for you, but it also might not. Somebody who I used to emulate when I squatted was Dennis Cornelius. He was he's like still to this day like one of the best squatters in the 120 kg class. I would say at 275, 125 kg is probably his best. But he just had such a stable squat, flat-footed squatter, really powerful. A lot of power coming from the super secret hidden squat muscle. The adductors, the inside of your leg, the meaty part of the inside of your leg, your inner thigh. That is a very underutilized muscle that I try to really make sure that I'm using, especially in a flat-footed squat when my toes angled out a little bit. And yeah, that's where your power comes from, you know? I just feel like, yeah, of course you're using your quads and you can emphasize certain areas. And there's always going to be somebody who's just like really, 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 really good at a certain technique. Heels with like a mid bar, like a John Hack, right? But I have not seen anybody squat like him in a long time. Like I just don't know of anyone that has his body type. And there's oftentimes, it's very difficult to sort of, like if you've already been training like 5 years and you want to change the way that you do something, it's tough. I did it. I used to squat super narrow and I was good. I hit like 615 for a double or a triple or whatever that way. But once I got in the flats and I widened my stance, my squat went up like instantly 30 pounds. And then I went up like a lot more after that. That's what worked for me. My legs are pretty, like I don't really have any imbalances any which way. So I think that stance just allowed me to kind of utilize my potential and squat in a way that would allow me to, you know, be strong and just exert the most amount of force possible. And that's why I ran with it. But that, again, that's me and that's what worked for me. It's not for everyone. Yeah, I think if you guys look at the team, there's a lot of people that squat that way. I always say, try to start out in flats. And then if you need the heels, then you can use the heels. I've had lifters prep in both. And then we just figure it out closer to the meet. Sometimes you're deciding between, and I'm getting a little bit off topic, but you're deciding between like a little bit more of an upright squat where you're kind of getting depth better. And the bar is a little bit higher versus a low bar squat where you got to tip forward a lot. And it just doesn't help your case for hitting depth. Again, we got to convince the judges. But I think it's good to train everything. I like hitting all the different kinds of squats. You're not just like only doing low bar. There are times for that, but there are times to hit high bar and train legs in many different ways to build a super strong squat. Anyway, if you guys have any questions or concerns or, you know, want to know more, just let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, you don't need to be upright when you squat. Your spine needs to be straight. Maybe a little bit of butt wink in the bottom. But anything more than that and you risk potentially getting hurt. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.